G'day guys, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Hope you're well. Lee Manutsi here in Australia. Beautiful day here. I hope it's great wherever you are in the world, and thank you so much for tuning in. I've got a great interview today with Thais Gibson, and she has some passion, she has some energy, and you're going to feel that in this episode, I'm sure. I really want to get her back here for another interview to discuss her book. So she's written a new book called The New Attachment Theory. We don't really delve into it too much in this because she jumps into her story, opioid addiction, how she recovered from that, and then she delved into study and research to really figure herself out. And she's done 13 different modalities, which she combines all together. And in this, you can see she just charges through with three key pillars to really unlocking the unconscious mind and rewiring the brain so that we can change certain negative behaviours that we might have in our life towards living more fully. So I loved it. I think there's so much value in this episode that you're going to love it. Make sure you get your pen and paper out and take some notes if you're not driving, of course. Come back to it. I need to get it back here for the second interview to discuss the new attachment theory and how it relates to our relationship preferences and how we can reprogram that. But it all interrelates to what we discuss here. And I think you're going to really love it. I got a heck of a lot out of it. Make sure you reach out to her, connect with her, comment, give her thanks for coming on the show, and hopefully that'll encourage her to come back here for another round too. I really love this one, guys. Hope you enjoy it. Check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. All the show notes will be there, including the links to Thais Gibson. She is the founder of the Personal Development School, so very aligned with the content here at the Hidden Why podcast as well. Enjoy, guys. Talk soon. Hello, Thais. Welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. I hope I got that pronunciation right. Thais.
It was perfect. You got it. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here with you.
Thais, it's spelled Thais.
Exactly.
Thais. Oh, well, there you go. That's good. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good. Doing well. Down here in the sunny Queensland, Sunshine Coast. Beautiful.
Very nice. Very nice. It's like 6 p.m. in Eastern time in Canada right now.
So back in Canada, we just had a good chat about during COVID, and you went to Texas and had a bit of a change there. How long was that for? Like, how long did you go?
So we still have a place that we go back and forth to just outside of Austin. So we go every winter now at this point, but we were there for a total of maybe 2 years at the time or so, and got out of the Canada was a really interesting place during COVID. So we exited there and stayed outside of the Austin area for a while. And I honestly love it there, right over by Lake Travis. It's a beautiful place and really, really kind people. A lot of just it was a good time. It worked out nicely in the end.
Down to earth sort of people, hey there.
Yes, I think we're always lucky. Like my husband and I, we kind of have bounced around from place to place. Austin's a really big podcast hub and there's like a lot of great people there. So that was really nice. And also, I think we just luck out. We always just find good people wherever we go. We seem to be quite lucky that way.
Well, you attract what you put out there, right?
I maybe so.
I believe in that. I'm interested in your story. You've got a big foot in the door of personal development, which is pretty much what this podcast exists for. Yeah. It's a personal journey. It's been going for a decade, and it's all about personal development and growth. And what got you into it? Like, how long have you been doing it for, and how did you end up here?
So I ended up here probably, maybe as most people, in the sense of I had a lot of personal work to do on myself. I had a long journey. I came from a really turbulent background, like a really, I always am mindful of my family's privacy, and they probably don't want all their information out on the internet, but really tough upbringing in a lot of ways, and some really intense things that I experienced, and had one coping mechanism growing up, and that was to play soccer. Grew up thinking I am going to get a full ride soccer scholarship to the US from Canada. I am going to escape my home. That was like my one dream. And in one of my scouting years, had a knee surgery and basically immediately became addicted to painkillers. And that kicked off about a 6.5-year journey of almost daily painkiller use. Tried a lot of things, inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, AA meetings, NA meetings. I mean, you name it, tried a lot of things. Nothing stuck for me. And
Interesting. Hmm.
I was in an experience one day. I mean, I was really young. Like I started using like literally, I think it was like a week before my 15th birthday. So it wasn't, I mean, I say started using it. It started that I was literally prescribed Vicodin after knee surgery, but
Mm,
I
mm.
was in my home and I was like, oh, this really like takes the edge off. This makes me feel a lot better. And so that turned into me at a pretty young age wondering like what the heck is going on with my life. I was fairly high functioning as an addict. I did get a soccer scholarship to a much smaller D1 school. And maybe on the outside my life looked okay, but on the inside I was just a mess. Like just like I was like a shell of myself. That's all I cared about all day long, just fixated, going through the motions of being in school and trying to play sports and just like, a shell of who I was. And I was in a psychology class one day, and somebody said to me, "Oh, your conscious mind can't outwill your subconscious mind." And it was really important for me to hear that because I realized like my conscious mind wanted to get sober. It was the one saying, "I'm going to stop using. This is the
Hmm.
last time. I'm going to do these things." And obviously, my subconscious mind was the one that had different
Driving
motives,
it.
that had
Right.
conditioning. Exactly. And so that was really monumental for me. Like it really just something about the way that was said to me on that day just really hit. Like it clicked. I was like, oh, my conscious mind wants sobriety and my subconscious doesn't. Like, oh, that makes sense. So I got to figure out what's going on down there. And it wasn't this like lightning bolt moment where I suddenly got sober, but it opened the doors to me and the tools for me to start approaching sobriety differently. And then when I plugged into different things and started really learning about my subconscious mind and how to rewire and what I was trying to escape from and numb and what was really going on, that was absolutely life changing. And that kicked off a journey. I got sober at 20 and a half years old. And that kicked off a journey of like massive investment. I almost got like addicted to personal growth and development. I did 13 certifications, a PhD in pastoral
Yeah.
counseling. I was trying to bridge like
You've done a lot.
spirituality, neuroscience, and psychology and find all those overlaps and really had a good relationship to God that opened me up to believing very much in a higher power and in a very personal way and not necessarily a super dogmatic way. And yeah, most life-changing thing that ever happened to me for sure. And so that was about 16 years ago and been in this field and working with people and working in practice for coming up on a decade and a half, not quite, like 13 and a bit years.
Yep.
And yeah, absolutely love it and eat, live, breathe this stuff all the time.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Opioid addiction. I mean, we don't talk about it too often, and I don't hope you don't mind sharing, but talk us through that. Like, because you say, that 20 and a half sober, and that sort of strikes me as like, okay, this is a prescribed medication to you, and you got fully addicted to it, right? So
Fully, yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah.
Like, do you just take more and more and
Oh yeah. So I mean, it started with I was at home and I think there was a couple of things that happened at once. One, my home was a pretty stressful place. So
right?
soccer got me out of the home. It was like I
Yeah.
was out, I had after school sports, I would come back. Suddenly I was like at home on crutches for 8 weeks, prescribed painkillers, and I was just so distressed. And I remember thinking like, oh, when I take these, I just feel less on edge. Like I just remember thinking, oh, this is better. And I went to a school that, a high school that, had a lot of drugs. And I started with just taking them and taking more and then saying my knee hurt for longer and kind of going through this whole path of telling people that telling my family, oh, I just need to be prescribed more and the whole 9 yards. And then it turned into I found this girl who was a year older than me. And she told me, and I think there was a few coalescing factors. She told me, she ended up selling them to me, but she told me, oh yeah, like when you come back and you're recovered from your knee injury, like painkillers are performance enhancers. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is going to help me because I was trying to like make it to get a full ride soccer
Yeah.
scholarship. And I remember,
Mm.
okay, so and these are performance enhancers. And I heard that and there was sort of these things coalescing. So now I had this motive to stay using them. They took the edge off and I started with just taking them and then it turned into chewing them. And then eventually it progressed into a number of different painkillers over the years and a number of ways of ingesting them. It turned into to snorting them. And it was a really, really hard and dark time. Like it was
It's
not
nuts,
a
isn't
very
it?
nice time. Yeah,
Mm.
and It's funny too, because like it started for me at a time where I never thought like, I was kind of like a straight A student. I was pretty high functioning, high achieving, and then just like my life was just on the decline for a while there. And I laugh about it now. It almost because I've done so much inner work for so long, it feels almost like this distant story. Like I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not tormenting or sad, but at the time, and I have every so often when I really dig into it and talk to people about it or relive old stories or memories at that time, I sometimes am remembered like, wow, I really suffered at that time.
Mm,
But what's interesting is that at that period, I think one of the most tormenting things was like obviously that I was then in this cycle. But I think one of the hardest things for me was all of the self-loathing that came out of it because it was like I would tell myself all the time, okay, I'm going to delete people's numbers from my phone. I'm not going to, I'm going to avoid this girl in the hallway. I'm going to avoid these people. I'm going to, the people that I would get them from, right? And I would do all these things to be like, I'm going to change. And you just don't. You
consciously.
just tell
Mm,
yourself, yeah, you tell yourself a million times over. You tell yourself thousands upon thousands of times, this is the last time. I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to stop. I can do better than this. I can change. And you tell yourself and you tell
hmm
yourself and you tell yourself and you just lose the battle to yourself every single day repeatedly. And it's honestly one of the most, at least in my experience, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, that was like, I just thought I was useless. Like, I just thought,
mm,
like, I can't do anything. I tell myself I'm gonna do this one thing every day and I can't even like make any headway. And it really, I think at that time in my life, just crushed my belief in myself, my belief
mm.
that I could do anything or show up differently. And yeah, so it was a very difficult time, but also looking back, honestly, something I'm so grateful for because that at a young age allowed me to go, okay, there has to be a better way. I remember going to an AA meeting. I was like 18. I would sporadically go through these periods of trying to like do stuff. I went to an AA meeting that was recommended by a friend who, was trying to help me. And I went and I remember this girl in the meeting and she was like, I'm 100 days sober and today was the hardest day yet. And I remember sitting there and being like what is this? My whole life's going to be a battle. Like I'm like a kid and my whole life is just going to be a battle internally every single day for the rest of my life. And I remember thinking like there just has to be a better way.
Mm.
And I'm a big believer that by digging into the subconscious mind and rewiring and really understanding, like there's this old saying in a lot of addiction communities, the problem isn't the problem. Like the painkillers don't jump down your throat or go up your nose while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
It's not the painkillers, it's your relationship to them that's the problem. It's what you're
Uh,
numbing, what you're hiding from. And I remember thinking like there has to be a better way. And because of doing a lot of the subconscious work, I had my appendix out in 20, maybe like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and I prescribed painkillers after. And I was in so much pain, I wasn't even like thinking about it. Took them home, took some the next morning and thinking about it, like, oh, I have them. And then I wasn't in a lot of pain, stopped taking them, and moved out of that house that I lived in like a year and a half later. And as I was moving out, they were in one of my cupboards. And I was like, this is crazy. They're just sitting here in a cupboard. I forgot about them for like a year and a half since having surgery. And it was cool to see that like because of doing so much inner work, it wasn't, in the past, it's like, God, get that, throw that stuff
yeah.
down the toilet, and it's just
The
because of
relationship
doing a lot of
changed.
inner work,
Mm.
there wasn't a fight. I don't live in this like war every day, like some people will tell you it has to be. And I can,
Wow.
again, can't speak for anybody, but I just don't think that the problem is the problem. It's the addiction, that whatever the drug of choice is the symptom of other underlying problems that are
Underlying
existing.
problems. So you got
Well,
to unpack that, and that takes a lot of deep work, right? And
a lot of
um,
work.
a lot of time too, I suppose, in doing that. What is your relationship, or what is your thoughts, I guess, or opinions on opioids and opioid use now?
So, like anything, I do believe there's a time and place. Like I do believe, obviously, when people are going through repeated pain, or suffering. I mean, of course, like, if somebody comes out of an intense car accident, traumatic injury, like there's a time and place for things.
Yeah.
But I absolutely believe that there is a true opioid crisis. I believe that they're being extremely overprescribed. If I told you stories of things I saw and experienced during that time, like I was in a relationship with somebody at that time who without giving this person's, personal, I try to be mindful of other people. It's
Yeah.
not, they don't choose to be on the internet. I was in a relationship with somebody and they worked in a place where there was a lot of benefits to where they worked at. And they traded some of these benefits to their doctor, to their literal physician for painkillers. And like, this doctor was like, "Oh yeah, hook me up over here and I'll give
Crazy,
you a
huh?
prescription." Yeah, and I thought like there was countless things like that. Like I could go on and on with stories, but yes, absolutely overprescribed. I mean, there's a true opioid crisis. I think there's a massive conflict of interest in terms of the fact that doctors get paid out from certain things like that. There are some things that are coming into play to make some changes, but like, yeah,
It's a big
I
issue.
think way overprescribed. Yeah, and also there's not enough. There's an interesting dynamic. Like, why does, your grandmother have hip surgery and not get addicted to opioids? And then a teenager, for example, like myself, who doesn't even know really much about addiction at the time,
Yeah.
does immediately. Like, it's because of your internal landscape. It's because of your programming. I mean, yes, there's a genetic predisposition towards things, but I also think there's certain people need to numb because they don't know how to cope. And other people may not have those same conditions. And a lot of those conditions exist at a subconscious level. So, are the painkillers a problem in and of themselves? No, but we do have a system that I believe way over prescribes things. And I think that
Mm.
people are not educated enough, especially with things today like fentanyl. And I mean, there's just a massive crisis for many reasons. And I think there's a conflict of interest with physicians,
Yeah,
certain people being able
100%.
to get it. Yeah, like it's crazy. And I just think that that whole system, it still blows my mind every day thinking about it. And on top of that, there's a time and place for them in certain conditions for sure, but there needs to be more education and awareness. And I think there needs to be more support for people at a younger age, in terms of tools to support them in why they do what they do and how to cope better and how to regulate their nervous system, how to rewire their subconscious imprints that are causing a lot of the pain points to begin with. And I think if those things are targeted, then the amount of addiction we see as a result of things
Yeah.
decreases. But I think that needs to change as a whole.
Building up greater self-awareness or greater awareness around it all. I mean, you're in developmental stages. Your brain's still developing at the age of 15, all the way through to when you went sober. So that's huge to go through that period, right? Do you ever think back, or have you thought about what was the driving force behind you? Because you mentioned something before, like you try and you say, I'm not going to do it today, and you might go a week or a month or a year, and then you're back doing it, and you're back into the old ways again, because you've got some level of willpower maybe that gets you through that period, but you sort of fall back and you keep going back.
Yeah, for me it'd be like like a day max here and there in between. There was
Well,
very
everyone's
little
different,
break
right?
point.
Like
Oh yeah.
you can have periods where you might go for a month and then get back into it, and you just go, oh shit, what's the matter with me? You start, going, there's something wrong with me, and then you just give up. A lot of people
And
do.
And to your point exactly, like I think it's a very relatable mechanism for people. Like maybe it's not opioid use, but maybe it's, for some people it's pornography, for some people it's gambling, for some people it's, food addiction and binge eating sugar. Like for different people, I think it's a relatable experience, maybe not to the same degree that I experienced for everybody's case, but to say, oh, I'm going to not eat the junk food and then you eat it, or I'm going to not, go
Mm.
to the casino and then you go. And I think that's a very relatable experience. So I actually boiled it down over the years to a few key principles. This is like I nerd out over this stuff. This was like
Okay,
life changing
good.
for me. So,
Let's do it.
I'll break down some of it. So here's the first thing. We as human beings, so there's sort of three big overarching principles. We as human beings are wired by emotional association. So let me give you an example. As a child, silly example, but it paints the picture well. When I was a little kid, I watched this movie with my mom, and this movie was like, I think I was like 6 years old, and this movie had a serial killer in it. And right before the serial killer would go kill people, he was like a teenager, they would show this picture, this little clip of him in a scene where he had these red Converse shoes on, and he would walk with these red Converse shoes and drag a shovel, and he would be about to kill somebody. And I remember as a little kid watching this movie and feeling sick to my stomach. And to this day, when I see red Converse shoes, I'm like, oh, red Converse shoes, I just don't like them. Because red Converse shoes are neutral. Some people might think they're cool. And for me, I had negative emotional associations tied into them. My experience of
Yeah.
seeing red Converse shoes for the first time was wired that way. As human beings, we wire all things with positive versus negative associations. After getting sober myself, I had a conversation a few years later, working in practice with people, and I had a man come in and he said, it was actually his wife who said, please see my husband. He was coming out of a rehab program and coming into sober living. And she said, will you please see my husband? And he was an alcoholic. He had 3 DUIs, had all these challenges. And I asked him on day one, I said, what was your first association to alcohol? And he said, I was really nerdy growing up. I really struggled. And I went to a party in high school and I drank and I made all these friends and I was the life of the party. So his associations to alcohol are highly positive. Now,
Oh,
alcohol
positive.
and
Yeah. Mm.
exactly. So we're wired, and this is where you hear this term and like, chasing the dragon, right? Because what happens is when we get wired, for myself, I remember having painkillers and being like, oh, I think this makes me feel like at ease. Like this takes the edge off. It like reduces my constant feeling
Yeah.
of stress in the home. And so you get this relief. So you start to wire in this association to this experience. And so number one, and there's 3 overarching principles for what I find to be very helpful at the subconscious level. I have a tool for people because I originally started, one of my big first certifications was in hypnosis. So it was all about how do we change the subconscious mind and things like this.
Right.
So the tool I give to people to break unhealthy habits and patterns, I call cost benefit rewiring. We already know if you imagine that your costs and benefits are like scales, you see more benefits than costs subconsciously to taking the drug, to doing the bad habit, to gambling,
Yep.
to whatever it might be for somebody. Okay. And that's because that was the way you were wired. That's what imprinted your subconscious mind. Now,
Yep.
consciously, your mind can know better. Your mind can say, like me, stop using this is ruining your life. Like the client I
So your
mentioned,
conscious mind looks at the cost of it better.
yes. So your conscious mind can know better, but your subconscious
Hmm.
mind is responsible for 95+% of all your
Yeah.
beliefs, thoughts, and actions. So
Mm.
your subconscious mind runs the show. So what ends up taking place is we have to recalibrate our stored associations emotionally, almost like you're balancing the scales. So this is a part of what I did on myself. It was one of many, many things at the time. And I learned things the hard way back then. But I started getting people to do this to break bad habits later on as I sort of fine-tuned this and worked with people and replicated this system out. Pillar number 1 of 3, you have to write out 20, 30 costs of this experience, the bad habit, the drug, the alcohol, whatever it is. They have to be highly emotional. Okay. You want to get
Hmm.
really specific with them. And 20 benefits to breaking this, okay, to stopping. Now, the subconscious mind gets wired through repetition, emotion, and imagery over time. Okay. And it usually takes at least 21 days of rewiring to start shifting and changing our neural networks because neural pathways get fired and wired through repetition, emotion, and imagery.
Okay.
So when you have the cost and you see the cost, I lose my relationship to my family, to my children. I push people away. I do these things. You're writing out the costs. That's giving a lot of emotional output. You see the visual images of what's happening. The conscious mind
So
speaks
when you say
language.
visual, so you're writing these down. When you're saying visual images, you're sort of imagining, like pushing family away when I do this particular behavior. So you're sort of imagining
Exactly.
yourself when you're writing it. Okay. Yep.
Exactly. And the more specific, the better. So the more
Uh-huh.
emotional, the better. And what you're doing when you do that is you're now taking this thing, the alcohol, the substance, the gambling, whatever it is, and you're making negative emotional associations to it. And then we say, okay, and what are the benefits of getting sober or of quitting gambling? And you're making positive emotional associations to its opposite. Now, doing that one
Wouldn't the
time is
costs
not
and
enough.
benefits be sort of similar?
Similar, yeah, but it's just getting like a positive association to something different. So for example,
Because you could say, I'll push away my family when I drink or when I whatever. And the
yeah,
benefit is that by not
when
doing
I
it,
get
I'm bringing in people or,
exactly. So you're going to see them a lot of times go in inverse,
yeah,
but what we're doing is we're power packing emotion, and
the
emotion is
ones
the
are
language.
negative and ones are positive.
Exactly. So why we're
Mhm.
trying to get positive associations to changing the habit, negative associations to continuing. We write them out, then we record ourselves saying them out loud. Okay, so
Uh-huh.
reading them out. And
Mm.
it takes about 5 minutes a day to listen back to them. And your job is to do it in the first hour that you wake up or the last hour before you go to sleep because your subconscious mind is the most suggestible during that time. Your brain is producing more alpha and theta brain waves.
Right. Yeah,
So we
yeah.
sponge it. So we listen back. And your job, because if you watch this for a second, your conscious mind speaks language. Your subconscious mind doesn't. It only speaks in emotions and imagery. If I say, okay, Lee, whatever you do, do not think of a pink elephant. your conscious mind understands do not, but your subconscious flashes a pink elephant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to speak in the language because nobody's consciously choosing to keep using. It's a subconscious issue. So what we do is we have to speak to the subconscious in emotion and imagery. So by coming up with these 20 negatives to using,
Yeah.
20 positives to quitting, we're getting all this emotion and imagery. It's now reaching the subconscious mind. The repetition and emotion of it fires and wires. That's actually how we build neural networks in our brain.
Yep.
And when we listen to this back in a suggestible state, so in that first hour that we wake up or last hour before going to sleep, and we feel about it into our body, so it really anchors into our subconscious and into the rest of our nervous system, we start to actually recalibrate and rebalance these emotional associations. And that's the first pillar of how we start shifting and changing behavior.
Yeah, right. So you recommend doing that and listening morning and night, or just one or the other, or both?
Depends how bad the problem is, right? So the more the better.
Well, they talk
If it's
about
like, oh,
affirmations, and I had a lady on here a couple of weeks ago, and positive affirmations about what you want to achieve in life, and actually recording it and listening into it. Like, she is religious about it. She'll listen to it in the morning and then really image herself or imagine herself in that place where she wants to be, the goal, the outcome,
yeah.
and
And
doing it first thing in the morning and at night.
yeah, and the more you do things like that, the better. The other thing is we have to stick to it for at least 21 days consecutively. So I always say to people, pick the morning or the evening. But then it's part of your
What happens
routine.
if you forget a couple of days, or you go on a break, and I don't know?
So the real answer to this, it's a good question. The real answer, when I would work with clients on these things, I'd say, hey, look, you gotta like stick to it. 21 days, we gotta go because neural networks respond. Neural networks are like muscles. So when you keep working them out, they grow. And when you divest from them or you stop exercising, your biceps shrink, right? Like you get into a place where your muscles atrophy, and neural networks in your brain are the same way. They atrophy when you don't work them out. So when
Yeah.
we're trying to build an entirely new set of neural pathways, we want to like work them out, fire them, wire them, continuously show up for it. But in reality, the honest answer to this is that you can take Bob, who's never felt unsafe in a car before. He can get in a car tomorrow, God forbid, get in a car accident. He's fine, he's safe, but he gets shaken up. And the very next day he goes into the car and he feels he has a new core belief, I am unsafe in a car. And it can be from something, if something is emotional and intensely emotional enough, it has the impact to create a belief immediately. So
Yeah.
the more emotion we deliver, but a nice sort of like baseline to stick to is make it's not going to be you're doing your rewiring work in the morning and great, you do your rewiring and suddenly you have an immediate shift and change from one day or 2 days because it's not as
Yeah.
emotional and intense as getting into a car accident. So I always say to people, a good baseline, something really good to stick to, 21 days of cost benefit rewiring work, repetition emotion, try to hit every single day, make it something that you can stack with habits, even if you want to, like you wake up, you listen, and you're focusing on it as you brush your teeth, or you lay in your bed as you snooze your alarm, whatever it is, do it so that it's something streamlined. It only takes a few minutes a day. And it's the first of 3 pillars for how to really start shifting our behaviors.
Love it. Love it. And would you recommend like recording it, obviously listening to it, reading it as well, or is just one or the other? Doesn't matter.
Listening to it is good. The reason I like the listening part is that the listening frees up time so that as you're listening, you can focus on visualizing, which is the language of the subconscious that speaks in images, and feeling it in your body, which really anchors it in physiologically. And the more you feel, the deeper it lands. So that if you can have it recorded, so your only job is you're in a suggestible state, you feel about it in your body, you visualize the images, now it's reaching the subconscious mind. And that's the most effective way to do it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And would you go through the negatives and then the positives? It doesn't matter which order you do it.
I like to do in that order. Cost of
That order?
going through
Costs and
this.
then benefits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it to be.
And I know like a lot of things that I've tried to do and I miss a day, I sometimes feel guilty. I've gotten used to not feeling guilty about missing days. But what are your recommendations there for someone that goes, oh, I missed a day? Don't beat yourself up, right?
Do not beat yourself up. Yeah, make it an intention, but nothing good ever comes from beating yourself up. People think that because we grew up in the system of punishment reward, we grew up being classically conditioned. You get punished for doing things wrong, rewarded for doing things right. We think that accountability is self-punishment, and it's not. I've never seen self-punishment help anybody. Curiosity and understanding and accountability. Hey, why did I do that? What led to my mistake? Okay, good.
Why did I miss it? Yeah.
It's great, exactly. But beating myself up, that just puts you back right into the mindset that causes you to be like, oh, I feel bad about myself now. I should go back to this bad habit that's there to soothe me or to cope.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Love it. Cool. First
So
pillar.
can I go into, okay, yeah. So the first
I want
pillar,
to
can I
hear them
share the
all. This
other
is
two?
great. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing. So that's the first pillar. And so we're balancing, we're recalibrating our stored emotional associations next to the thing. So that's number one. Number two, every single thing that we do that our conscious, logical, analytical mind understands as being bad, if we're doing it, it's because our subconscious mind sees it as being good. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's sort of similar to what we were talking about. And the reason, if we dig a little bit deeper, is because it meets a need or a set of needs. So I'll give you an analogy. I had a period of time in my practice where I worked with people who had anger management issues, and they would come out of anger management and come to work with me. And I remember being like, "What did you learn in anger management?" And they would say, "Oh, learn to count to 10 and count backwards from 10 to 1 and crazy things." I was like, "What? You wasted some time and energy going there." In reality, I never saw people who actually struggled with serious anger who didn't have four underlying patterns. Number one, they struggled to set boundaries, like proactively. They would set boundaries with anger later on, but they struggled to set boundaries. They felt deeply unseen and unheard because they didn't know how to be vulnerable and communicate, and they felt powerless. Guess what anger does? When you yell and get loud, it's a subconscious strategy to get seen, to get heard, to take your power back, and to set a boundary. And it meets all of these needs in one fell swoop. So that is an
Right.
analogy for
Makes
every other
sense.
unhealthy. Yeah, every other unhealthy habit we have, there we go. That's exactly what it's boiling down to. The unhealthy habit you have that you judge as negative consciously, your subconscious mind is actually getting needs met through it. So whatever that is, I tell people, hey, let's take inventory. Like, what's the unhealthy habit? And I want you to tell me the needs that this unhealthy habit meets. And it actually is a really great awareness exercise. And then what we do is I call it upgrading our strategies. So if somebody's sitting there and they're going, oh, my unhealthy habit is I yell and I raise my voice. Okay, good. What needs does it meet? Oh, well, it gets me seen, heard. I finally say all the things on my mind. I take my power back. I set a boundary. Good.
Mm.
Let's work on doing those five things in a healthy way. So we don't need to rely on the surface, use of anger to get these needs met. So I'd work with people who struggled with anger and we'd work on them practicing being more vulnerable, setting
How do
boundaries
you
earlier.
how do you unpack that? But like by sitting down and say, okay, what's your unhealthy habit? Eating chocolate cake in the morning at 6 a.m. Okay.
Yeah.
What
Good. What
unconscious need is that being met? Like, how do I delve in and actually understand what need is that? Like, because that's hard to do, right? Must be.
Yeah. Well, so I have a system for this. So I have a list of the top needs that we have as people, and I get people to
Right.
dive into it. So I have a lot of experience in this area, but I can tell you food, chocolate cake. If you can list them, I'll tell you the major needs that people might relate to. Chocolate cake. What are our earliest associations to chocolate cake? Well, these are actually unconscious rather than just subconscious associations because usually they're pre-verbal and before the age of 3. And so what's people's first experience of food? When they're being breastfed. And what happens when a mother is breastfeeding their child? There is a tremendous amount of oxytocin being produced, which is the bonding neurochemical. So, what are our earliest unconscious associations to food? Food equals emotional connection. We're being held and cradled, and so we have comfort and safety. And most people that I've seen who are starving for junk food or starving for food, they're actually starving for emotional connection, comfort, and safety. And they have very dysregulated nervous systems. And when they learn to regulate their nervous system so they feel intrinsic comfort and safety, and they learn to be more vulnerable and open up more to other people and build more deep and true emotional bonds, this need to go to food all the time starts
Mm.
to actually way. And you see this in a lot of the research and literature. Like it's super interesting. People, when they're in the honeymoon phase of relationships who report having issues with food, they actually report those issues diminishing by up to 40% just when they're in the honeymoon phase of a relationship. And
Right.
it's because there's elevated oxytocin and serotonin production. They're in they're getting their comfort, security, and connection needs
Mm.
met.
Mm.
And so you'll start to see, you plug in the cost benefit tool. Then you start going into, okay, well, what needs do we meet? Let's upgrade our strategies to meet these needs in healthier ways. And we start to get through these pillars. And there's some really interesting ones. Like you're welcome to share other unhealthy needs, and I'll tell you or unhealthy habits, and I'll tell you what needs are often connected to.
Okay. Porn.
Porn. This is such an interesting one. I was honestly hoping you'd ask because I love talking about this one because it's such a taboo thing, and people are like, "Oh,
Yeah.
pornography." Oh, but what I've seen over and over again, people who struggle with porn, it's like so they lean. I focus a lot on attachment work. They tend to lean more avoidant in relationships. Okay, not always, but a lot of the time. So guess what pornography does? It gets people's needs met for some form of connection control, novelty or variety, and sexual connection or pleasure without even having to be vulnerable or put themselves out there. And so
Hmm.
generally we see these needs are met while these individuals are getting to avoid the things that they're afraid of, their fears and their wounds. So we'll often see people who struggle with pornography, they struggle with actually being able to connect, being able to communicate their needs sexually and intimately in their relationships. That's a massive theme
Yeah,
there
yeah.
that's very prevalent. And they don't really, a lot of times they feel stuck on how to seek out novelty with their partners or try new things or open up, with people about their needs in that area. And so pornography becomes something, okay, I can get my connection, variety, novelty needs met, and I have a sense of control over the experience and I have sexual pleasure, but without having to expose myself in the way that makes me feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Are these needs related to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs or anything like that? Is there like
So
a group of specific needs that you can boil it down to?
a great question. So over the years, I've collected what people tend to report as being the biggest needs. So it started from, yes, it's rooted in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They in the sense that each of these needs would boil into one of the layers of the hierarchy, but it's just a lot broader. So I've collected sort of the top 50 needs that people tend to have in relationships. So,
Right.
and it's interesting because I actually do boil them down under, I boil them down more under our six basic human needs. So for example, something that would fall under connection is one of the six basic human needs. You might have emotional connection, you might have social connection, you might have community, you might have somebody wanting to feel seen, heard, understood in their relationships, and those are needs that they have. But
Yeah.
that boils under connection. And I have a really in-depth worksheet I'm happy to send to you, and you can put in the show notes or something if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that. It's interesting. Because I assume a lot of those unhealthy habits relate to a few of those needs potentially, like, eating chocolate cake or food,
Yeah, yeah,
security,
absolutely.
safety, connection.
Exactly, exactly. And you'll see too, like sometimes people say food, and you can ask them, like, hey, what else happens when you eat food? And you can see their patterns, but sometimes people will say, um, yeah, I tend to binge eat food when I'm trying to avoid working, or I'm trying to avoid things that are stressing me out. Or sometimes people binge eat food because they struggle to self-soothe. And you'll see that food is they're using as a need for regulation.
Mm.
Because if you actually think about it, food takes all of your, for people who are a little more anxious, food, when you start eating a ton of food, all the blood flow goes away from your brain into your stomach to start digesting your food. And often it can move people from sympathetic nervous system mode into parasympathetic nervous system mode.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of these underlying patterns. But when you can get people to start upgrading their needs, hey, let's meet these needs in healthier ways. Let's regulate your nervous system and build more connected relationships instead of, trying to rely on food to be the source of these things. Let's now do cost benefit work on like what are the costs of binge eating food and the benefits of actually eating a healthier diet that's more balanced. And now we start to build those things in. Now we've got two pillars that are helping people build momentum and behavioral
Yeah.
change.
Love it. Third pillar.
Yeah. Okay, third pillar. So this is the biggest one in
We
my
got time.
opinion.
We got time.
So this is what I believe drives our behaviors more than anything, and drives our nervous system function. So we go through life, and as we move through life, we acquire core wounds. Okay, so they're a form of belief that are just the bottom rung of the ladder. So imagine for a second that you go into the woods tomorrow and you're going for a walk and you see a bear, and the bear chases you, and you run away and you're safe, thank goodness. But for whatever reason, the very next day, you have to go back into the same woods. Well, what do you think your brain and body do when you go back into the same woods where you got chased by the bear the day before? Do you think you feel fully safe, or do you think you feel a little more
On
on
edge.
alert?
A bit on edge. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what ends up happening is people go through their life and experiences. And when we have a negative or threatening experience, two things happen. We have a negativity bias that we're wired with. So we don't go home after being chased by the bear and say to your friends and family, oh, I got chased by a bear today. And when that happened, I saw the most beautiful flowers as I was running for my life. Like we don't sit there and think of the beautiful, we don't notice that there's no clouds in the sky while we're being chased by the bear. You remember the bear's teeth and how big and scary the bear was.
Mm.
So we're wired to hang on to negative things more than positive. And number two, once we are imprinted at a subconscious level with a threatening experience, our subconscious mind becomes the lens that we see and interact with the world through.
Yeah.
So then you go back into the woods the next day and you reproject out the likelihood of the bear. We're wired that way as human beings, and that's great if we live in predator prey society, but it's not great when your version of the bear in the woods is that you felt abandoned as a child, or that you felt trapped by, your parents or controlled too much growing up, or that you felt betrayed in a past relationship, then those are personal psychological versions of the bear in the woods. And we believe, oh, I've been abandoned, I've been betrayed, I've been trapped, I've been unsafe. And that's what's imprinting our subconscious. And now we see and interact with the world
What
through
you're looking
that
for.
lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
Mm.
now these are our core wounds. And I have about the top 15 major core wounds people go through in their lives. And these are these deep, like almost primal, bottom rung of the ladder, painful beliefs that we carry about ourselves and about other people and relationships. And what happens is when this core wound is triggered, okay, your core wounds are the source of the biggest triggers that every person has. When these core wounds are triggered, they cause us to start thinking racing thoughts. If you believe, for example, that you're not good enough as a core wound, then you go into a room full of people, you start thinking, I'm not interesting enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not funny enough, I'm not gonna make friends here. And you start thinking all of these thoughts, almost like tree branches coming off of a tree trunk. You think all
Yeah.
these thoughts about how
Yeah.
you're not good enough. Those belief and thought patterns now color your emotional state. How do you feel when you're thinking those thoughts? You feel stress. That stress and from those emotions is actually made up of neurochemical reactions like cortisol and norepinephrine, which now signal your nervous system to move from parasympathetic nervous system mode or ventral vagal nervous system mode, for example, where you feel open and sociable, into sympathetic nervous system mode. Now you're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And neuroscience has actually proven that every action we take is based on our emotional state. So even people who are like, oh, I'm a very logical, rational thinker, they're making emotionally based decisions at their tipping point and then rationalizing through logic after the fact. So if you follow that back to its root, when we have these core beliefs, your personal
Mm.
version of the bear in the woods that you've accumulated at a subconscious level, that affects your internal dialogue and all your patterns of thought, how you feel, your neurochemistry, and your actions follow. So
Yeah.
now let's pretend that I'm going home and let's pretend I'm a year into my sobriety journey and I'm going home. And let's say I've never worked on my core wounds and I come home from a long day at work. And at the end of the day, my boss said to me, hey, you didn't do a very good job on this report. And let's pretend I have a whole bunch of core wounds that are I'm not good enough, I'm unsafe, and I'm rejected. And now I'm driving home and I'm like, oh my God, people are going to reject me at work. Everybody's going to humiliate me and embarrass me. I'm going to get fired from my job. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I'm thinking all these thoughts. I feel all these emotions. Guess what the heck I want to do when I get home? I want to numb myself because I'm actually trying to numb the core wounds and the associated internal dialogue and emotions that have now kicked off as a result of them being triggered.
Yeah. Well.
So, what I
Mm.
get people to do in this third pillar is find their biggest core wounds. Everybody has them, and they are solvable problems. You can rewire them. And in doing this, it changes your internal dialogue, it changes your baseline of your emotional state on a regular basis, and it changes your nervous system function. A lot of people out there are like, let's regulate your nervous system. That's great. But you can do breath work or meditation, regulate your nervous system when you're stressed. And an hour later, your core wounds get triggered again, and you're back into this whole
Mm.
cycle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we have to be going in and actually rewiring the core wounds that are triggering off these thoughts, emotions, and actions that cause you to want to then engage with the unhealthy behavior.
So dealing with those core wounds in a similar manner as you mentioned in pillars 1 and 2, or are there
Yes.
different ways?
So
Yeah.
yeah, similar. I created a tool called belief rewiring. Not very good at naming things. And this is the tool. It's sort of based in, I did a lot of work in CBT and then hypnosis, and it's sort of where I think there was a gap missed. So bridging that gap. So what I get people to do is step one, there's three steps. Find the core wound that's bothering you and its opposite. So let's just use as an example, I am not good enough. Most people can relate to that. What's its opposite? I am good enough. I don't actually believe in affirmations because affirmations are language. So unless we're
Right.
engaging emotional imagery, you're just nobody wakes up and says, "Today, I'm going to tell myself 30 times that I'm not good enough and see how I feel." Nobody consciously chooses that, right? It's a subconscious pre-existing belief
Right.
that triggers off autopiloted patterns of thought. So step one, what's the opposite of the belief? I am good enough. Now, how do we now get to our subconscious mind with that? Well, what we do is we come up with evidence or memories of times we did feel good enough because every memory is just a container of thoughts and or a container of emotions and images. If you think of your favorite childhood memory and you're playing at the beach, you see the images of the beach. And we've all seen people when they recall an old memory, they smile or they laugh if it's a funny story, or they cry if it's a sad memory. So we can leverage memory to now reach the subconscious mind. So
Yeah.
step two, we come up with 10 pieces of memories of times we were good enough. It's evidence-based for us. We say, oh, I was a good friend 3 days ago. I exposed myself to this hard thing that I was scared to do 3 days before that. I'm proud of that. We feel the images, we see, or we feel the emotions, we see the images,
Yeah.
and then we record ourselves saying them out loud.
Yeah.
We listen back in a suggestible state for 21 days to build those new neural networks. It counteracts the original core belief. We're not born with the core beliefs. They get wired into us, and we're just using
Yes.
the same system of how we get wired to unwire them and
Mm.
change them. So we return to a place where we don't have this whole onslaught of thoughts, emotions, actions, negative, unhealthy behaviors
Yeah.
that we're
Yeah. Yeah.
using to cope from that core wound.
I always wondered why 21 days. Like, I think about one of these wounds that you might have, and it might have been just one-off experience, right? Or it might have been a whole series of experiences that led to this wound. And then how can
Yeah.
we sort of reverse that in 21 days? And why 21 days?
So 21 days is like the most research around neuroscience that it says to build new neural networks that are strong enough where
Mm.
they're likely to stick.
Yeah.
Now, if there's an unconscious core wound, subconscious mind is where we can retrieve information from. Unconscious mind is where it's much harder to. A lot of times the unconscious mind is more associated with like pre-verbal eras in our lives. So before the age of 3, things we can't
Right.
recall or recollect. So, some research says, hey, if it's like deeper and more pre-verbal, 63 days. So you'll see some of the range in there. But it's a tricky one because people can say, oh, this is the gold standard, this is the gold standard. 21 days I find to be a really safe bet because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, like I mentioned with the car accident idea earlier, somebody can get an immediate core belief because something's emotionally intense enough. So
Mm.
rather than going, unless it's if somebody says, oh, I was adopted as a child and I have an abandonment core wound, I'm like, good, you need 63 days like of counteracting that wound because it was pre-verbal, very intense for a young child, even if the child can't remember or recall it, has a huge impact on the unconscious mind. But if somebody's like, oh, 8, 9 years old, this thing happened, a lot of times 21 days, as long as you're getting a lot of repetition and emotion
Yeah.
to pose the original core wound. And if you're in a suggestible state, those are three ingredients that are really fast tracking our rewiring. So it's a really good, safe bet to go 21 days, repetition, emotion, imagery, suggestible state. And it's highly effective for people at that point.
And after the 21 days, do you find with your clients that they need to continue to revisit that, or is it like it's done?
Done. You'll see some big changes. So a couple things. Two caveats. We're always being conditioned, right? So that's why you hear like you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around, or where you see sometimes in a long-term relationship that you pick up on each other's mannerisms or expressions over time, right? Because
Yeah.
whatever you're exposed to repeatedly is also creating new neural networks on a regular basis. So what I see is people will, if they stick to the 21 days and they seriously do it takes 2 to 5 minutes a day. First thing is that in the first 7 days, people are like, oh, I feel slightly different. I'm starting to feel a little bit less like I'm going down those old spirals of thought and stress. Around day
Yeah.
14, people start to go, oh, I think I'm good now. I don't think I need to keep doing it. And I'm like, nope, you got to finish your 21 days, please. Like for your brain, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And by 21 days, people report being frequently less triggered. So way less frequency of being triggered and these things coming up. And if something comes up that's uncomfortable around this core wound, it's much less intense. Okay. So that should be the outcome that any person is hoping for if they're going to go home and start doing this today. Second, here's the caveat. Caveat is that if you overcome an abandonment wound and that's out of your brain, you're not constantly jumping to the conclusion that when somebody didn't text you back, they're abandoning you and all these things. It doesn't mean that if, God forbid, somebody you love and are close to passes away 10 years from now, that you don't get a new abandonment wound, right? Because
Yeah.
that's a new intense event. So we can get new imprints over time in the form of core wounds when we're exposed to things.
Yeah.
But
Of
then we
course.
know that around, hey, we'll just go back and do the rewiring, and that will help us heal and process some of this experience. So that's an important caveat. And the other thing is it is a little bit more difficult if you are trying to heal in the environment that's wounding you. So if somebody is constantly yelling at you in an unhealthy relationship, things like that. So those are like, and then you're trying to do the
Yeah.
wounds that you're good enough or you're safe, but every day
You still
your
getting.
emotional experience, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and makes them feel unsafe, then it's hard. So I get people to make sure they're mindful of their boundaries with their environment, to focus on doing 21 full days, and to understand that they can always come back should, a 10 years from now, a decade from now, something bad happen. You know what to do to help yourself process.
Boom. That's amazing, huh? You're
helps a
passionate
lot.
about this stuff. Yeah, I can see you geek out on it a little bit. That's awesome, man. Well done. Well
Thank
explained.
you.
And for those interested in unpacking it further, your website is at university.persondevelopmentschool.com.
Yeah, it seems to redirect there. It's just personaldevelopmentschool.com
Yeah, I thought
is the
so.
website.
What does it
Yeah.
redirect there?
Yeah.
Anyway, link will be in the show notes at personaldevelopment.com,
Personal development
personaldevelopmentschool.com.
school. Yeah.
Don't leave out the school. Where else can they reach you to connect and chat?
Yeah, so I am on YouTube. I put daily content out, mostly focused around like attachment styles, but just because attachment is the root of where we get all this stuff to begin with. So that is at Thais Gibson dash Personal Development School, and on Instagram I'm at the Personal Development School as well.
Okay, cool. Let's stick those links in the show notes. Everyone out there listening, you can check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. Send us any of those resources. We'll try and stick them up there as well. That'll be cool. Are they available on the website?
They're available in our program, so internally, but we just have an attachment quiz on our website, so people can go and learn about their own core wounds, their own needs, things like that. It gives them a personal report, but it doesn't have the list of all the needs, so I'll send that over to you.
And your book just released, just launched, The New Attachment Theory?
Yes.
That's just launched, right? Yeah, yep. So we'll stick a link in that. We didn't really delve into that, but I assume it's all correlated here.
It is. It's about going into the root of your attachment style, which is these pillars and your behaviors, your core wounds, and your needs, and how to actually rewire and change them and change your attachment style as a result. So it's going into a lot of the same things for sure.
I feel like we need to come back and sort of, relate it and cross it over, because relationships are important, right? And it's a key pillar for your overall joy in life. So connecting those dots would be cool sometimes. So let's get you back on the show.
Thank you.
Any last thoughts before we let you go? Anything I didn't ask you or you want to mention?
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. I love that we explored a different avenue of behaviors. I like changing it up, so that was really fun. And thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate being here.
It was a joy. No, thank you. Thais, everyone, check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in this week to this interview. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had. Make sure you check it out at thehiddenwhy.com for all the show notes and links to our guest. And if you have any comments, any suggestions for the show, please make sure you reach out as well. Also, would like to just ask a favor. If you do like what you're listening to, if you love what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. Whether you're listening to this on iTunes, wherever it might be, subscribe to the podcast so you can stay up to date with all the latest episodes. And some exciting changes happening this year at The Hidden Why, including the launch of our new website, which will be updated very soon. So watch this space for that, guys. And once again, live more fully, have more meaning, find more joy. We'll see you around the next interview.